John Tavares joins the 1,000-point club in the loss to the Islanders. We'll recap the moment and the game as a whole and look ahead to tonight's matchup against the New York Rangers. All that and more coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
Your Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Well, Dave, he did it. John Tavares did get the 2 points he needed on Long Island and got himself to 1,000 career points. It came in a very dramatic fashion with just 6 seconds to go in the game, but it, got an assist on the game-tying goal. The bench ended up clearing, and his dad had an amazing celebration up in the stands as well. And some boos, a little bit of cheers, but an outstanding celebration for John Tavares. Massive milestone, 1,000 career points.
Yeah, it almost as soon as we realized that he had the chance to get to 1,000, it was hard to not see it happen, right? It's just one of those hockey god moments where it was kind of already etched in stone before the game even happened. And yeah, with that much time left, you think that it's not going to happen, but you couldn't have scripted it any better than how it happened.
Right. I mean, you look at it, and there's 6 seconds left, an absolute flurry from the net. The thing is, no one really knew if he had actually gotten an assist on that, if he got a piece of it, or what happened. So it did take, the bench a few minutes, a few seconds to realize that was the point. Did you know that you have to get permission, by the way, to empty your bench on a goal?
Yeah, actually I did. There was another situation like that. I can't remember what milestone it was, but I think it was Ovechkin actually. When Ovechkin got his 800th goal, that they needed to permission for the bench to come out to celebrate with them. I do remember that.
Yeah, so I remember last year, maybe it was Marchand when he got his 1,000th point or something like that, and the bench is cleared. I'm thinking to myself, does this happen a lot? Does this happen often when guys hit this milestone? I remember asking one of the insiders, and they're like, yeah, you actually have to seek permission and get ahead of time, get permission from the league and from the officials saying, hey, if this happens, can we leave the bench and celebrate? And obviously they got the permission ahead of time, and it took a second for everyone to realize that Tavares was going to get an assist on that game tying goal. But it was such a great celebration for him. The smile, he knew right away he was getting an assist on that goal, and a wholesome moment watching his dad's reaction too. What a perfect way for it to happen, right? On Long Island, where he spent the first 9 years of his career, his dad in the building because it's the father's trip. Just everything kind of went perfectly for this to happen. Well, semi perfectly. I guess 2 points. 2 points for Tavares and 2 points for the Leafs would have been the perfect way for it to happen, but still, happened pretty good. Pretty good night.
Yeah, I blame Steve Dangle for that because he literally tweeted out Tavares is going to get 1,000th point, and it's going to be the Leafiest thing when they lose.
Yeah, that's what happened.
I blame it on Steve. I blame it all on Steve.
Yep, and that's exactly what happened. A 4-3 loss in overtime. Bo Horvat ended the game in OT. Why don't we'll take a quick break. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll get right into this game and we'll get our thoughts on it. And we'll go through the good, the bad, the ugly. And then we'll tee up tonight's game because we got another one coming up pretty quick, a back-to-back in New York. So they got the Rangers tonight in MSG. So we'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll get into all that. But first, I want to tell everyone about one of today's show sponsors. It's our good friends over at Sleeper. A new NHL season brings all sorts of possibilities. Matthews could score 50 goals, the Leafs could hoist the Stanley Cup, and you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick one of the studs like Tavares or McKinnon or Crosby or Matthews, Marner, whoever will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in any given game. To win 100 times your bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Leaf fans. You can win 100 times your money by playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms and views for details and locational availability. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti. We're a daily Maple Leaf centric podcast. You can find us wherever you get your pods from. Also up on YouTube. We have new content coming out each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So if you're new, you're just stumbling upon us, we appreciate you giving us a shot. If you enjoy the content, we do ask that you leave a like here on YouTube if you're watching, and subscribe as well so you know exactly when the new episodes are dropping each day. So we are reacting to the Maple Leafs 4-3 overtime loss. For a second there, the vibes were high with John Tavares getting to 1,000 points. The whole team just ran out onto the ice with 6 seconds left. But less than 5 minutes later, it was the Islanders emptying their bench when Bo Horvat ended things in overtime. Overall, what'd you make of the Leafs' performance in this one, Dave?
I mean, when they were trailing, it was just like they weren't looking great, but they battled back. And I didn't hate their effort. I didn't like how the goals were scored per se. Just Islanders were very simple about it. There wasn't anything like intricate that they did to like fool the Leafs. Just hard work, right? They got outworked on pretty much all three. Well, minus the overtime goal, but the 3 goals in regulation. So, but what I liked about what the Leafs did is they didn't back down. They could have that could have been a 3-1 loss, right? They could have just been like
could have packed it in,
but they didn't, right? So, and then with overtime, like it goes, a play like that, you're trying to go for a goal, doesn't work, and then you have the 2-on-1. Like as soon as that happens, that might you already know kind of that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's just the way she goes. In overtime. If you don't bury on your chances you have in the offensive end, there's a good chance to come back the other way, unless you can get a big time stop. And Leafs were unable to get that from Samsonov. What did you make of his night, though? It's unfortunate because I thought he played decently well in Nashville. He wasn't that busy, obviously, but he did have to make a couple of stops. I thought tonight he wasn't as sharp.
No, like the goals he allowed weren't in like high danger areas, right? They were kind of from a long distance. I didn't like the third goal. Like that's one where you're like, we got to get a stop, right?
Was that
like
that was the one that went blocker side, like right through him, right?
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so like when you see the puck, like it wasn't screened or anything, kind of just got beat. Those are the tough ones there, right? The Leafs had to work for all 3 of the goals that they scored, right? They had to get into the dirty areas to score those goals. The Islanders didn't have to. And that I think was the tough part for Samsonov, is that I mean, yeah, he was definitely not as sharp as he was against the Preds. And like your team doesn't give up a whole lot in front of the net. A lot of those plays, as we noted, were coming from, I don't know what the average distance of the goals were, but didn't seem like they were of the high danger volume.
30 31 feet was the average distance of goals. So that's at 5-on-5. Hold on, let me, although I don't think I
I
guess
think
3
they're
on
all at
3.
5-on-5.
Yeah, except the one on at in overtime at 3 on
Oh,
3. So yeah, 31 feet from the net was where the average distance was, and two of them were considered medium danger shots. So the two goals, yeah, medium danger, and then one was considered a high danger goal um as well. So yeah, like to your point, that they weren't really grade A chances that they were generating. Um they were just kind of, mid goals that were being scored. The one I think he was a little screened on. It looked like they were in his way. The one, like the first goal too, was it the first or the second goal that went through Marner's feet. It like just some bad puck luck too. A couple bad bounces. Like Marner, typically he's able to grab that puck and clear it right, or stop that puck from going right between his feet. But it kind of just bounces right through, and they're able to get a goal there. But yeah, definitely you wanted to see a better performance out of Samsonov, just because like this is his net now, right? Like this is his net for the next little bit. I know technically it's a back to back tonight. Martin Jones is going to play, but it's not like Martin Jones is going to run away with it if he has a stellar performance tonight. I believe they'll still end up going back to Samsonov more times than not throughout the duration of Wool's injury. And you just kind of hope that he could follow up that game against Nashville with another solid performance here tonight. And it was just kind of, lackluster, left a lot to be desired once again. It's someone who did follow up a pretty solid performance against Nashville against with another good one tonight was Austin Matthews, who I thought was exceptional. 11 shots on goal tonight for Austin Matthews. He's putting everything on net, scored a beautiful goal on the power play as well. Just, the way that this guy can just like settle a puck and the quick release on his shot is just astounding, Dave. Just astounding.
Yeah, I mean, it was like that play was like just all over the place. I was trying to track what Nylander was like, kind of like doing his best to corral that puck, and then gets it to Matthews. Like that was such an awkward shooting angle too for Matthews, right? Like he didn't catch it cleanly. He just like he knew he just had to get it off quick, and that's what you got to do also against a goalie like Sorokin. He was really good in this game.
Yeah.
You have to you can't let him give him the opportunity to get into a position to make the save, right? So I give the Leafs a lot of credit. They knew they had to work for the goals that they got. But yeah, Austin Matthews, like they were talking about in the intermission report about, is he the favorite to win the Rocket Richard? And they made a good point saying like he hasn't had the consistency of playing like he has over
Yeah.
a good stretch, right? So we're starting to see that now, though. Like you go back to the Boston game, you see what he did. 2 goals against the Preds. Like this is Austin Matthews starting to heat up a little bit, and yeah, I think it's this. This is what we come to expect from him too. We shouldn't have been surprised that he had a performance like this, but because of the way the season has gone and how it's taken him some time to get there, I can see why people are still at awe sometimes.
Yeah. Anything else that you pulled from this game that you want to discuss before we get to the good, the bad, the ugly?
I mean, somebody, I think like with John Tavares' goal that he scored, I think it just shows once again how valuable he is as a guy that can just fight his way in out of like physical play and like just basically be the more physical player on the ice. And like they need to utilize John Tavares more in those situations, especially in front of the net. Like he's one of the better Leafs when it comes to scoring in that area. I feel like that's something that they don't really make use of too much. So that's something I like to see them do a little bit more of.
Yeah, well, they're not many point shot guys. Like there's
No.
not a lot of dudes who'll rip it from the point. So that's kind of why you don't see that happen all too much. There's a lot more, pretty passing plays is how they like to set up a lot of their goals. It's not too many greasy tips in front of the net or rebounds in front of the net. They like to play a little bit more of a pretty game often. But hey, you look at Tavares' goal, you look at the game winner, and they can't all be pretty. Can't all be pretty. But they do all count, obviously. All right. What was good about tonight's game? What'd you like for the Maple Leafs?
I mean, they battle back, right? Like they've struggled playing on Long Island. Like this isn't a like they really haven't played. Like I remember the last time they played there, wasn't that the game they allowed like 7 goals?
Yeah, they got
They got
dummied.
pumped, right?
Yeah.
And so like I just like that they battled back. Um, I also just like the fact that the Islanders, like John Tavares, continues to just draw that reaction from the Islanders fans.
Yeah. By the way, what did you think of the booze? Even when they announced that he had gotten to 1,000 points, still got the booze. I was a little surprised. I didn't
I
think that we would hear the booze on the 1,000th point. When he touched the puck, when he touched the ice, he was getting booed all night, sure. But I thought for sure the 1,000th point they would, kind of set aside their differences for a second, give him the good golf clap, be like, all right, solid, thank you. Like a lot of those points came as a member of the New York Islanders, and they would give him his flowers. But no, there was a lot of booze, even still. I mean, it helped tie the game, so maybe there was just a little bit of, pissed off people for that, but still, it was a great accomplishment. Like they flashed it on the scoreboard, they announced it, and got mixed reaction to say the least.
uh, uh, it's not surprising just because this is how they've been with him, right? Ever since he's come back,
Yeah, but
and
I thought that they would at least like this is a different situation, like it's 1,000 points and it's a
yeah,
celebration of a career in which he was a majority of those points were scored in that for that team, not in that building. This is the new building, but for that team. Like that's kind of where I was a tiny bit surprised that the fans didn't really understand like the gravity of the moment, that they were a big part of that moment, and they just still decided to boo away anyway.
yeah. They just it's a little tough to explain because we obviously don't know. We're not there to really know how the Islanders fans have really taken to this. Like I think of like though it's not like the Islanders have gone into like a position where they're a brutal team, right? Because John Tavares left. Like they've been in the mix ever since he left. They really don't have a reason to be upset about how the team, like where the position the team's in. I can just be I can understand why they're upset because of him leaving and things like that. At some point, they're gonna have to get over it. Maybe they'll never get over it. I don't know, but like I just wasn't surprised that they didn't acknowledge it in the way that maybe others would. I'll give this credit, like the Islanders players and the bench doing it, like that was
Yeah.
classy. So I guess there's like at least someone on the within the Islanders in that building wearing an Islanders jersey was acknowledging at least the significance of the moment. But yeah, no, I wasn't surprised that they were that they wouldn't even consider acknowledging it. At least the Islanders did, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, 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 I guess classy for the organization, and I mean, there was a lot of players still on that team who he played with, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's still some veterans who stuck around in the island for the last few years that are still on that squad that definitely were part of the 1,000 points. So yeah, it was nice to see them giving their stick taps to Tavares. That was my good, by the way. Just the whole situation with John Tavares scoring the 1,000th goal, the celebration, the stick taps from the Islanders, his father's reaction up in the press box, all of it was really awesome. The bench coming out, yeah. So that was all my good. What was your bad, Dave? What was bad about tonight?
Bad for me was, I guess, like Samsung didn't have his best game. Like the goals he
Mhm.
allowed weren't overly difficult, right? Um, like again, they were kind of just, as we said, they weren't, right in front of the net or anything like that. He had a chance to make the stops and he didn't. So I guess like in a way that everything but the overtime goal. I didn't like any of the 3 goals that were scored on him per se.
Yeah, I had the exact same thing. I didn't think that they were particularly good. There was a couple that kind of went right through them, like that third goal that was blocker side. And this has been, blocker side. I remember last time when he was out there playing, um, or not last time, the time before when he was playing and he gave up, I think it was a 3 or 4 goals that night and all of them were like blocker side. And it was like, okay, this is starting to become a trend. And again, tonight, you saw a couple of times that was the case for Samsonov. So, that's something that I want to keep an eye on, and I'm hoping that he can change that going forward. Because if that becomes the book on Samsonov, that he struggles maybe to make some blocker saves. It's never good when fans can pick up a book on a goaltender. You
Mhm.
damn well know that the players on the ice have that same book, and they've had it for a lot longer than we have. So yeah, that was a similar for me. The ugly, really quickly.
The overtime goal. I don't care. Like, they go through all that just to lose an overtime like that. That was brutal for me.
What was brutal about it?
I mean, like you go through all that and then just to lose in overtime like that. I just
Oh, so like emotionally.
yeah, just like
Okay.
it was the emotional letdown of you go through all that to get yourself back into the game and get a chance for 2 points. Only for it wasn't like it wasn't like they battled all overtime. Like it was not. It did not take very long. So like the adrenaline wearing off a little bit. I thought they could have. That was a moment there where they could have really rallied behind the goal and just find a way to finish it all off.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I accept that answer. I think that's a good answer.
Like
In
like
that
those
case.
things happen in overtime. Like those types of goals happen. I get that. It's just the way it happened.
Yeah. Okay. I get that. I get that. There's more of the emotional aspect than
Yeah.
like the goal itself or the play
Oh, it was a
itself.
nice goal. Like that was a beautiful play. Like
Oh,
there's
it
not
was it was a
much that
great
point
shot.
to do on that.
Yeah, absolutely it was. For me, like well, it was the reaction I had written down that the reaction to Tavares' 1,000th point, the fact that he got booed. We kind of talked about it a little bit, so I'm not gonna go deeper into it, but I just wish they respected it a little more. Like it's a
Yeah.
big moment for him, and I think he would have like I know he was probably expecting some mixed reaction like he got, but I think he would have preferred obviously that the team that he had, worked his ass off for 9 years, the first, 9 years of his career, would have acknowledged it a little more. Like would have been a little bit more receptive to the moment and understood the gravity of it. Like he's now what the 98th person in NHL history to reach 1,000 points. Like it's hard to do, man. That's an impressive feat, and to get booed um, when they announce it and flash it on the jumbotron kind of stinks. Like in a way, I get it because technically it happened on like the game tying goal. It forced the game into overtime, and then you're probably on edge as a fan, not knowing, okay, do we just piss away a point because of this? Like, so I suppose I understand from that perspective, but like at some point, Dave, you said it, you got to move on. Got to move on. Hey, we did it up here in Toronto, Vince Carter, right? Like Vince Carter, we moved on, and I think
Mhm.
this guy now will be welcomed into the team. And if they want to retire his number, I think that most fans will be on board with that. Whether or not that happens for Tavares, I don't know. They're clearly not there yet, but at some point, they got to move on and just let this guy play hockey and stop booing him every time he touches the puck. Like, come on now. It's just something else. But anyways, fans, they can do whatever they want, I suppose. They pay the money to go to the games. I do wish that they, gave him a little bit more respect. I think he deserved that. But
Yeah, I don't think he was a free agent, right? It's not like he asked to leave. I can understand maybe they were led on to believe he was going to be coming back, but no, I think the way that they've handled this is, I wouldn't say it's looked childish, but in a way it's kind of looked childish. Like,
at this point, it is like your first, couple of games. He's there, sure, whatever. Throw snakes, boom. Throw your jersey around,
I
burn
hate
it.
this thing way more than anything they've ever done.
Well, sure, but whatever. Like it's the first few games. Okay, get your anger out. But like this guy's contract is done next year. Like it'll be 7 years next year. Like get over it.
Yeah.
Build a bridge and get over it, New York fans. Come on now. It's ridiculous that to this day they're still upset about it happening. Like, especially since the Islanders have had way more success than the Leafs had since Tavares left. At least they've gone to a conference final. The Maple Leafs have won one singular round since that has happened. I think the Islanders have won like 4 or 5. Like, let's get over it. Come on now.
You know what? If
Anyways,
they can't figure out a way to, so it's if this, what I will say is, if they allow this to continue to make them miserable, have at it, guys. Like, if you want to be miserable about it, go right ahead, because of,
yeah.
it's petty. I would say if you're a current Islanders player, you've done so much to make this team maybe forget about that, and the team and the fans just continue to let that be an issue for them. I would be like, well, we've done so much. Like, we've made sure that this isn't something you think about.
Could you imagine if Lou Lamoriello got on the mic and was just like,
Oh, pull the pop,
pull the
break up
pop,
this.
pull the pop, and just said, hey, we need to respect this guy, blah blah blah. Like,
That
can
would
we
never
just
happen.
stop booing? Like, I think it'd be hilarious if that would have happened, but it didn't. But Leafs can turn this chapter, and they have to turn it around pretty quickly because tonight they get the New York Rangers on night 2 of a back-to-back. It's going to be a difficult matchup. Let's take a break. We'll come back, and we'll get into it. But before we get into all that, let me tell you all about one of today's show sponsors, and it's our good pals at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the price you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti. We are turning the page to the other New York team as Toronto wraps up a quick New York road trip, suffering a 4-3 loss in overtime to the Islanders. Tonight, they've got the even more difficult task in playing the New York Rangers at Madison Square Garden. How do you see this one playing out, Dave?
A very tough matchup. Like, this is one where back to back, you're going up against a Rangers team that's now considered a top team in the Eastern Conference.
Not considered. Statistically,
Sorry.
they are the top
Statistically, they
team.
are. Statistically, they're like, if there's only one other team that's got more points than the Bruins, and that's, well, actually they're tied in points.
They're
But
tied, but they're ahead of them.
yeah, like the Rangers are, a lot's going right for them this year. Let's put it this way. Like, they're, Jonathan Quick has looked really good. Their blue line has been like one of the tops in this league. They went like 10 games without Adam Fox, and we're like, well, we're gonna go 7-3, like 7-2-1 or something like that. No big deal. So I like, this is a tough game for the Leafs. But this is a game, if you're the Leafs, you want to show that you're you want to be among the contenders in the East, this is a team you got to beat, right?
Yeah.
No excuses. I know teams play on back to back, so the Leafs have had a lot of time off. Let's say they haven't played a lot of games, so back to back shouldn't really be too much of a concern. But
Well,
it's tough.
so they haven't played a lot of it's weird because they hadn't played a lot of games prior, like the few weeks
Mm.
prior, they've had a lot of games kind of thrown at them right here. Like this will be their 5th game in 7 nights. Like that's a lot of games here
Oh yeah.
to play if you're the Maple Leafs, right? So or 4th game in 6 nights, sorry. Yeah, that's a lot of games to play in not a lot of time. But you look at like the Islanders, the Predators, then they played Ottawa on Thursday, and then now they got the New York Rangers here on Tuesday. So that's 4 games in the last 6 nights. That is a lot of hockey, right?
Mm.
Like for a short time period, that is quite a bit of hockey. You've got Martin Jones starting in goal for the Maple Leafs in front of what could be a tired squad. There's a lot that's going against Toronto in this game, and New York, they had the night off last night. They got to watch that game against the Islanders if they wanted to. Quick study on the opponent or a live tape study while watching the game, perhaps. So, the Rangers, it's going to be a difficult task for the Maple Leafs. And look, New York, they're just let's be honest, they're the better team of the two. They're playing better, and on paper, they also match up a little bit better. So, it's going to be a tall task for the Maple Leafs to try and squeeze out 2 points here in New York. I will say this though, Igor Shesterkin has not been Igor Shesterkin this
Mm.
year. He's got a 283 goals against and a 908 save percentage. Now, I know his numbers against Toronto have been stellar throughout his career, but he's coming off a couple of poor performances where he's been a sub 900 goaltender. So, maybe he's coming back into this game. His confidence could be a little shook. If I'm
Mm.
Toronto, I'm probably going to try and shoot on him as often as I can early on, and hopefully, he doesn't get into a groove because when this guy gets into a groove, man, he's near impossible to beat. So if I'm the Maple Leafs, I try to get a quick one on him to try and maybe throw him off a little bit, and that might be their best chance to pick up points in this game.
Well, and a couple of things here is like the Rangers have won 3 of their last 4 against the Leafs at home. They're really good at home. Like they think they have the best
They're
winning
nine
percentage
and
at
two.
home.
They're 9-2 at
Yeah.
home.
Top points percentage in the league at home. So like that's what makes this a tough task for the Leafs. Let's also not forget the former Leaf connections here. If you're looking to throw any money down on, I wouldn't say to get a goal, but at least to register a point, you got Eric Gustafsson,
Oh
who
yeah, he's actually having a good year.
having a good year. Jimmy
At a
VC.
fraction of the price of what John Klingberg cost. But anyways,
Yep. Yep. You got Jimmy VC, who totally forgot that
Mhm.
he was back on the Rangers at one point. But I do think that this is a game where, you're going to see why the Rangers are among the tops in the league, right? Like they're just so deep. There's not really again, you mentioned it. Like Shesterkin hasn't played at his best, but because of how the rest of the team's been playing, especially Jonathan Quick, it hasn't really mattered that much for them. And
No,
that's a team you have to really be careful of.
no, absolutely. Like this is
Especially Alexei Lafreniere.
uh
He's
he's
pretty good.
he's starting to figure some things out, Lafreniere. And the thing is, he's starting to the coach is starting to play him, right? Like that's kind of been a big thing. Like last year and the years prior, he wasn't getting any playing time. The guy
Mm.
was averaging like 12, 13 minutes a night. Now he's getting 14, 15, 16 minutes, upwards of like 18 minutes a night playing alongside Panarin. Yeah, he's going to pick up points if he's put in those positions to succeed. Both the guys at the top of that draft, actually, him and Quentin Byfield, really starting to blossom into players. this season finally, which I think is good for hockey. You never want to see stars, top picks, flame out. The B word was pretty close to being used on Laffy. I think he's starting to reverse that thought process now. Hopefully he doesn't score tonight. I'll say that. I wouldn't want him scoring against the Maple Leafs.
No.
But we'll see what ends up happening in this game. But for the Rangers, like they've just been like they're honestly just a terrific hockey club. Like their power plays second in the league, operating at 30%. Their penalty kill is eighth in the league at 84%. The number one faceoff team in the league at 55%. And then, a goal differential of, sorry, I don't have the goal differential up here, but they've scored 3.27 goals per game. They've allowed 2.69 goals per game. So, quick maths, whatever the difference of that is, I don't feel like doing it. Like 53, I think is the answer if I'm doing quick maths correctly. 0.53 goal differential per game. So yeah, Toronto's gonna have their hands full. And look, the face-off thing is gonna be key because that's been a trend when the Leafs, win face-offs. They usually have a pretty good night, right? They establish possession that way, and they're allowed to do the things that makes them tick and makes them successful.
Yeah.
Whereas tonight against the team that's number one in the league, 55% success rate in the faceoff dot, I will be curious to see how much that will play a role in tonight's game.
I do too. Yeah, probably.
All right. Solid analysis. Solid
Thank you.
analysis.
Short and sweet.
All right.
MSG is. I wish I will say this is a bucket list thing of mine to go watch a Leaf game at MSG.
Yeah, that'd be sick. That would be sick. Any other final comments before we wrap things up?
I'm curious to see how Martin Jones plays tonight. Like we
Yeah.
haven't. I know he hasn't been good in the AHL based on the numbers, but I'm curious to see. Yeah, I'm curious to see how he plays. Now that he is like we know that they're gonna have to rely on him, not just for one game, but probably a few games down the stretch here.
Yeah. I mean, look, he's a guy who's been a starter in the league. So it's not like he's just some random guy who they're calling up. Like, this isn't Jack Greaves, who has to randomly come up and play. This isn't Eric Shalgren, who has to randomly come up and play. This is a bona fide NHL veteran who, to your point, was a starter in the league as early as last year in Seattle, right? Like, started a lot of games for that team. So I think that I think he'll be okay. I'm not all too worried. There's a difference between the NHL and the AHL. Your numbers can be very poor because, well, the defensive play in front of you isn't great in the American League. That said, the defensive play for Toronto has been spotty as well at times, but good luck to him. It's going to be tough. Again, like this is a quality Ranger squad. They generate a lot of chances and they can bury with the best of them. So, good luck to Marty Jones. Good luck to the Maple Leafs. Should be a decent game though. I'm still looking forward to it. All right. That'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcasting platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on X at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. Go ahead, leave a like and a comment down below if you're watching here on YouTube. That'd be greatly appreciated. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow to recap tonight's game against the Blue Shirts. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.